Welcome to the Vault. I am JJ Carroll. Today I have an incredible guest, Dr. Juliette Engel, who has lived a life that is probably second to none, one that is absolutely fascinating. I don't know if that adjective is to be used in that way when you begin to learn about her life, because her life is, the beginning was filled with the horrors of evil, betrayal, overcoming incredible obstacles, and then the second half, or even bleeding over from the first half, was survival, was overcoming incredible odds, and then a life of triumph and success and accomplishment. I'm excited to be able to have a long form discussion with her, and I want to give a brief biography, just a brief, because I don't want to take even a minute away from listening to her discuss about her life. So Dr. Juliette Engel, in 1955, at 6 years old, was sold by her father to MK Ultra. By 10 years old, she was a participant in sex magic. Struggled through all that time, endured evils and horrors that we can't imagine, that we are going to discuss, and escaped at the end of her high school senior year, and got into the University of Washington, and where she graduated, became a doctor, was married, had 2 children, sold a very successful practice, moved to Russia, created another practice there, co-founded 2 non-governmental organizations, Angel Coalition and Women and Children First, saving tens of thousands, if even more, children that were the most vulnerable in Russia at the time. This is a story that has incredible intrigue. It's a story that is going to be frustrating, shocking, but ultimately a story that needs to be told. So I want to welcome Dr. Juliette Engel to the Vault.
Thank you. I feel like it's such a blessing to be here and to be speaking to you. I look at my life and can't believe it, except that I have it documented every step of the way. The reason that I was sold by my parents at the age of 6 was that my uncle was one of the founders of the NSA, and my family had been involved in Project Paperclip, and the 5 uncles had been bringing Nazis over from Nuremberg and resettling them in the United States. And that was a time that the State Department, actually the Dulles brothers, Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles, sanctioned the creation of an illegal mind control program called MK Ultra. And they signed off on this and funded it in 1953 and made Dr. Sidney Gottlieb the director of it. And it employed the techniques of the Nazi scientists. And actually the MK and MK Ultra, everybody thinks it's mind control. It's not. It's Mein Kampf. This is the continuation of the Nazi mind control experimentations with the actual scientists that were doing them. So very often in the program there were each of the facilities would have a Dr. Green, a Dr. White, a Dr. Brown, Nanny Blacks. The Dr. Greens all had accents. I don't know what they were. I was a kid, but it was very clearly the continuation of that program, and people in the NSA, CIA, OSS put their children in it. So
now, ma'am, when you say your father sold you, can you explain that?
Well, my father took me to the park. I was 6 years old. We went to the park it was in Seattle, so he took me to Seward Park, which is this park along Lake Washington. And we met up with someone he called the bosun. It was someone he'd known from the Navy. And the bosun gave me a bottle of Coca-Cola. I'd never had one before, so I drank it all. and then got very weak and dizzy, and woke up later tied to a bed, face down, smothering, which is why I woke up. Those stinky black silky sheets, and spread out on the bed, unable to move and hardly able to breathe. But my father and this man, who then he was calling Vito, were standing where I could see them. And so I started screaming for my father, and he said, "Hey, kid, this is what I raised you for." I'll never, that is seared into my memory. And Vito started counting out money into my father's hand. And my father tried to turn away so I couldn't see them. Vito made him stay where he was, like right in front of my face. And so, and my father stood there when Vito got behind me and started to rape me. And to me, it was, and to any child, you know, when they say children have these sexual urges and these kinds of things, no, children experience rape and sexual violence as just violence. So to me, I was being stabbed in the back over and over and over and over. And that was probably the first time that I clearly split my identity. And I've learned later that this is one of the great goals of the MK Ultra program, is they take children and traumatize them to an extent with, I mean, there was the betrayal. I was being sold by my father. He wouldn't help me. I'm being beaten in the back with a stick, and I couldn't breathe. And I split and became left to myself. So my poor body was getting the life beat out of it, but my soul was somewhere else. And that somewhere else was riding a horse. I was riding a horse across a plain, just hard as fast as I could go, and it was beautiful and wild. And then I woke up later in the back of my father's car, and he was driving me home. And I just laid there and looked at the back of his head, thinking, I can never trust him again. And this is me at 6. I mean, this is six-year-old realizing that my father is not anyone I can ever turn to or trust. And I jumped out of the car. I'm not clear if I did that on purpose or I fell out. I think I did it. I didn't want to live anymore. And I remember this is on the Lake Washington floating bridge, which sank 20 years ago, but it was there then. And I was flipping along the asphalt, just rolling faster over and over and over until it became soft. And it ripped off all my clothes and pushed my teeth through my lip, and I think it broke my nose. And my life went on from there. I survived that, and my father took me home. They took me to eventually I was so sick and feverish that they took me to the emergency room. And then my parents were always saying, what a stupid kid, you know, she jumped out of the car, too stupid to stay in the car. I mean, they always said that. I was always getting hurt, and I'd be in the ER, and it'd be like, oh, she took the bicycle out in the middle of the night and ran it over a bridge or something. I was 5. So hearing the constant lies about yourself as a child, so that's the narrative. And if you're going to survive, that's the narrative you live by. But having the ability to live in a different identity within myself at the same time preserved who I was. And I'd say that was the best survival mechanism I had, because not only was I in that space, but God was in that space. And I had a very strong sense of that there may be an identity here that I had to live by with a certain set of circumstances, an identity here with other circumstances, but always I could get back to the core, and God was there. And I get panicky if I can't find that core, that central place.
Through all that pain and suffering and that evil, you were able to identify that there was God?
Yes, I never doubted it.
Really?
Nope.
After all that, so you wrote 3 books, and the book that this, quote, chapter of your life is Sparky Sex Magic. This was your alter ego or your other identity that you went into for power and strength and try to get away.
Yeah, and the one I became. I created that ego and then moved into it, and I've been that ever since.
But you found God there?
Yes. Yes.
Really? I'm going to be shocked because this is one of the big things that I wanted to talk to you about was God after seeing so much evil and not seeing it, living it, being destroyed by it. And you're telling me you've seen God and you never question it. That is fascinating to me.
What I did question was grace. And when I was 10 years old, I tried to confess at a church.
Right.
Because so much, I always assumed that I was responsible for everything that happened. And a lot of awful things had happened by the time I was 10. And there was, maybe you know the church, I think it's called St. James.
Yes.
There on the, what is that, Imperial Beach Avenue?
Yep, IB Avenue.
Yeah, in front of the elementary school, across the street from the elementary school. And I kept going there and trying to confess.
Yeah.
And the pastor and his wife kept saying, "We're not Catholic. You don't have to confess." But I want to confess. And they said, "God gives you grace." I said, no, I need forgiveness. I've done all these awful things. And by that time, I mean, I'd been involved in snuff film productions, and where they made me think I'd actually killed other children. As an adult looking back, it was ridiculous, but I believed it.
I think this is very important, and I know it's very hard for people to hear this, because as I did my documentary, people recoil. And what I have discovered in being in law enforcement, and particularly in this type of evil, if we don't truly articulate, like verbalize what it is, they'll literally disconnect and then come back to the conversation because they don't want to even begin to, in their brain, try to visualize what we're talking about. So could you take a few minutes and talk about from 6 to 10 before you went into Sex Magic, when you're talking about snuff films and you're talking about being raped, I would like to get into specifics of where were you? Who was running it? Why were you put in those situations? I think this is as important as anything, because people don't want to, they don't want to hear it, because if they hear it, they have to believe it.
And yeah, I want you to ask me, because there's some box in here that can tell you, but I'm not directly connected to it all the time. But it was Southern California. It was the same year they made the Godzilla movies. So, and I say that because the place where they were making the stuff films had the Godzilla movie props. So, I don't know, mid-50s.
Who was running it?
Nazis, honestly, Nazis, and in conjunction with the Navy. It was always the Navy, this is my experience. It was always Navy MPs who went out, got the kids, kept us locked up, kept us in cages, drove us around.
You're able to understand what the connection was between the paperclip Nazis that were here and the Navy MPs?
Mhm. I understood. Well, I'll tell you where this occurred, which is why I had some knowledge about the connection. Is that there was a at that time I was living. We moved constantly. It was a lot of times it was the school would pick up abuse, and my parents would pick up and leave. We'd be in a different jurisdiction. Law enforcement couldn't do anything, and it went on like that for years. But we were always around Los Angeles, between Los Angeles, San Diego, and then up around the Bay Area, and they would take me. Looking at, I must have been 7 or 8, when they were doing the Godzilla movies, and they would take me to this place called Lookout Mountain, and I know that because as they were driving us in, you could see the sign. It had a sign on it, and it was on a pillar thing and a metal sign, and there was a big mansion on top, and then underneath was a movie studio. And so they would drive us through these big garage doors into the studio underneath, and there was a lot of Nazi memorabilia and stuff down there. And I learned later, I didn't know at that time. I saw all that stuff. I'd seen that stuff in my family's homes too. But later I learned that had been used as a studio to make propaganda films for the Nazis in the United States, and that house was actually outfitted for Hitler to live in after America was defeated. And I don't think there's anything secret about that, but when I heard that, I said, yeah, I remember the old reels and cameras and dusty old stuff and flags and pennants and pictures were all still down there where they were making the snuff films. And I noticed that Will Rothschild just died in a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And that fire was in a mansion on Lookout Mountain. And there weren't very many places up there. So I wonder if it was that place. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember I just remember the winding drive going up to you could see the house, and then we went down into the underground facility where we were kept in like metal beds. And this, here we're coming to some of what I'm afraid of for the 300,000 undocumented kids, is that they had different groups of trafficked children. I was in a group, clearly in retrospect, I was being trained up to be a leader. And if I'd gone through this whole program, I'd probably be a Hillary Clinton or a Secretary of State or a senator or some thing. But to do that, you had to give up your soul. And I never did that. I escaped and decided to live as an individual. But that's as the story goes on. But when they were doing the snuff films, a lot of drugs were always involved. But I remember I was naked all the time. There was a lot of sex. And then they would bring in all the Mexican kids. So these were the white kids, the elite kids. And I never knew, well, maybe I did. I probably did know who some of the other ones were, but...
How many children would be in that area?
Well, they'd have like 10 of us.
10 white children?
10 white children doing tableaus, and they'd have us arranged, and they'd bring in the little Mexican kids and have us kill them. And, of course, I wasn't going to do that. And
okay, hold on. When you say kill them, is this the theoretical killing, or real killing, or
I don't know.
don't know?
I think that there was death, and I realized, and they made me shoot, but of course I didn't shoot at anything. But then they'd die at the other side, and they'd show us the dead kids, and that was real. And I actually believed that I had somehow managed to kill them, and had horrible guilt about that. Couldn't stand it. But when I grew up and actually held a handgun and shot one, I realized, nah, that was all I had was toys. But that was also part of it, this horrendous guilt. So I wanted to go confess that at St. James.
Right.
I wanted to tell them, that I'd done these awful things. And of course, they didn't believe me,
Right.
for one thing. The other thing is, Pastor Don tried very hard to explain the concept of grace. And it took me 60 more years to understand it. That God gave us grace. And still a hard concept that I wanted to know what I had to do to reverse all these things that I'd done. And that involved, by that time, I'd been through several Saturnalias, and we can talk about that.
What can I ask you before I'd like you to go to that, yes, because it's in your book, and how many times did you go to this house to do these snuff films? Was it at one time?
No, it was 3 or 4 over the years.
Would you see the same kids, the same white children?
None.
No.
Yeah. The only time I had any sense of who these other kids ever were was when we were at Disneyland, because that would involve quite a bit of time in a group together. But like with the snuff films, we'd arrive in different vans, and they very much kept us apart, except at night when we were locked in these metal beds.
When you say metal beds, can you describe that to us?
Like a hospital crib with bars that come up, except that these had bars that went over the top as well. And I was actually relieved when they put me in one, because it meant they were going to leave me alone for a while.
So you'd run around with other children naked. Would they rape you during these films?
Yeah. So
With adults or other children?
Oh, no, it was adults. It was adults.
And why was this happening? Why do you think, looking back, why were you being brought there? Were you being trained? Were you being conditioned?
I think it was that, and then why they were killing these Mexican children, I don't know. I mean, it just, I have no explanation for a lot of this, but I think it was conditioning and a means of control. They were sorting out some of the kids that didn't bother, they thought shooting the other kids was great, and they got put into a different group. And I actually threatened to shoot the handlers. And that didn't go well.
And when you're saying
so they sorted us out that way.
Of course, because they had it on film, they could see your reactions and go back and say, okay, who can move on to the next level, I guess.
I think they were sorting us out too, like who would be the killers. Who could be their contract killers.
And you believe your father and your mother knew this was happening?
Yes.
How would you get there? Would people come and pick you up? In your book, you said white vans would roll in and they would just literally body snatch you, knowing that your father and your mother put you in a position where you could be grabbed.
Yeah, it got
then
me
you were
ready.
gone.
Yeah.
Got you dressed up. Can you go through that? Tell you how your parents, because so people don't know, this is one of the connections that Dr. Engel and I have, a very powerful connection. And it's a whole nother podcast to talk about why this is powerful. But her formative, I hate to say formative years, but very formative years.
1 year.
One year in IB.
Mm.
So in Imperial
Very
Beach.
important.
And then I did a decade on the border. But I don't know, it's hard to explain. You do a beautiful job in your book articulating Imperial Beach, what it was, what it is today. A place filled with desperation, crime, hopelessness, physical filth, because the Tijuana borders on the south side, and all their sewage flows into the Pacific Ocean through Imperial Beach. So the beaches are closed. The stench, you and I talked about, there's a film that kind of softly lands on your body, and it's everywhere, right? And you just can feel it. You can smell it. You can taste it.
Taste it.
You can taste it. Yes, you can taste it. So you were always dirty. In your book, you write that you were always filthy.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you had to go from being filthy, kind of a tomboyish, riding your bike in the we call the estuaries, but I know it's different, right? And it was settling ponds. I know you laugh now because
the sewer.
it's a sewer. It's like settling areas that just raw sewage. So tell us how your parents prepared you, could send you to L.A. looking like that.
Yeah, I refused to take baths for a long time. I still don't take baths and take showers, but we didn't have them back then. So yeah, they would force me to take baths. Well, every year, and I think this happened every year, I describe one instance, which is when I was in Imperial Beach. And the reason I picked that time is it was the time that I actually created the person I wanted to be, and then became that person. And I wanted to write about that because I think this, and with trafficked kids who experience similar kinds of despair and misery in Russia that I worked with, I would teach them to create who you want to be and then move into that persona. And that dissociation is not a bad thing. It's actually a great mechanism. But every year in this country, right now they're getting ready for them all over the country, there are Saturnalias, which are celebrations of the birth of Nimrod, which is actually what Christmas is. I mean, Christmas, the date Christmas has nothing to do with the birth of Christ. It's the birth of Nimrod. And we've slowly moved as a way of destroying and dismantling everything Christianity is to the worship of Nimrod. And
because Christ should have been born somewhere in September.
Yes, sometime during the census, and it's pretty obvious.
We have the solemnity of the Virgin Mary this month, so it didn't take her 12 months to give birth to Jesus. So you just go back. So it has to be in that August, September-ish area. So what you're saying is correct. So please describe this pagan.
Well, the Nazis were big into satanic rituals, and the Church of Satan and the Black Masses. And here's an interesting tidbit. In the first 4 books of Revelation, it talks about the 7 churches of Asia and what they needed to do to fix themselves, what sins they were committing. We're committing all of them, but that's another, big time. But one of the churches, and within 300 years, they were all reduced to rubble. And these had been the centers of civilization, beautiful monuments, temples, streets, cultures, and they were reduced to rubble within 150 to 300 years, except for Pergamon. And Pergamon is described in Revelation as the seat of Satan. And the Nazis took that so literally that they went to Pergamon and they took the whole town. They took everything. They took the temples, they took the altars, they took the statues, everything, all the rubble, and they took it to Berlin. And so now the temple, I believe it's the Temple of Jupiter, but there's several different structures that they took out of Pergamon. It's all in a Berlin museum, and it's closed. I looked it up because I wanted to go see it, but it's supposed to be reopening soon, completely reconstructed. But that's how seriously they took this. That the Nazis were paying more attention to Revelation than we are. But the Saturnalia is the celebration of the birth of the chief deity of the Church of Satan, which is Nimrod, who is also Satan, who's also Mendes and a lot of other names. So this involves a lot of rituals, and it also involves cannibalism and child sacrifice, which is the part where I came in.